More than 30 years ago, when I went to cover the first Gulf War, when Saddam Hussein had occupied Kuwait, there used to be many jokes in the hack pack, as you would call traveling journalists in warlike situations. And we tend to be quite politically incorrect. So one of those was related to this irony that several Muslim Islamic nations were fighting, and to fight on the behalf of some, in this case Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, etc., rest of the Arab world besides Iraq and a couple of its allies or those that were sympathetic to it like Palestinians, to fight for the rest, US army had come in, or Western armies had come in, US, British, other allies, the French. So the joke then was that what should be the anthem of these soldiers? What should be the anthem of these Arab countries? The anthem should be Onward Christian Soldiers. I know it's very cruel and very politically incorrect, but this also characterized the situation, because to protect Muslim nations from fellow Muslim nations, you had summoned these mostly Christian armies from Europe and from America. Now look at the situation in Ukraine, Russia. This is a case of Christian fighting Christian. This is a case of Slavs fighting Slavs. This is the case of a white civilization fighting the white civilization. So I start this episode of Cut the Clutter with a little bit of a comment on this irony, that all the fear mongering so far, that world will now be driven into a nuclear war that nobody wants, was usually about India and Pakistan, or it's been about Iran or about North Korea. It's been about Asians. And the problem zones have always been Asia and Africa and Latin America. But if the world has now been brought genuinely close to what could become a nuclear war, if anything, this is between two nuclear superpowers, because Russia at this point has more nuclear weapons than the US, Britain and France put together. This situation has come up within Europe, between two white civilizations, between two Christian civilizations. So what do you call it? What made me think of it is a line that Putin used in his speech at that big stadium when he had that old big Nazi-like rally or a war-like rally that dictators address in Moscow. And there he used a line from the New Testament of the Bible. And the line is, quote, "Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends." Right now, this is one ruler of a Christian country, believing in an Orthodox church, Orthodox Russian church, quoting from the New Testament to inspire his armies to fight with forces of another country, in this case a country that follows the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. So that is the supreme irony in this. Now, once again, you can say that you can blame religion for violence. You should not blame religion for violence. But people who wreak violence often invoke religion, which is what Putin has done now. And what kind of cruelty and what kind of relentless violence this has led to, you can see in a little place, in a little city called Mariupol. Now, Mariupol is something which has been in our headlines all this while. That is the city around which the Russian forces have concentrated so much of their effort. Russia gave the city of Mariupol, that is the citizens, civilians, as well as the army, Ukrainian army detachments deployed there, to clear out. They said, if you lay down your arms and walk out, we'll give you safe corridors. You can go up, save your lives, leave your weapons, stop fighting, which means surrender the city. And Ukraine said no. Now what's been happening in that city is that even earlier, the Russians were following a policy of destroy everything, basically using destruction as deterrence. That look, we'll take your city down, building after building after building after building. These can be hospitals, these can be auditoriums, these can be indoor stadiums, department stores, whatever. And if you want anything of your city left, leave the city and surrender to us. Ukrainians, on the other hand, are fighting. This has gone to such an extent that this has become almost like a zid, almost like an izzat ka sawal. Putin wants to conquer the city, Ukrainians don't want to lose it. Now, is it only izzat ka sawal, or is there something else to the city? So let's first understand what Mariupol is and why it's so important. Look at this map of the southeastern coastline of Ukraine. This is abutting the Sea of Azov. Sea of Azov, which we had explained in an earlier CTC, is actually an extension of the Black Sea. It is about 39,000 square kilometers. That's a little bit bigger than the state of Kerala in India. So it's not tiny, and it's an extension of the Black Sea. And it's through the Black Sea that it then joins through those two straits across Turkey, Mediterranean and Aegean, and then on to Mediterranean, etc., the larger oceanic system. This Sea of Azov has Russian ports on it. It has Ukrainian ports on it. The two major Ukrainian ports on it are Berdyansk. You can see that. Mariupol, which is more towards the east. It's actually towards almost the other end, not far from legitimate Russian territory also. Mariupol also happens to be the 10th largest city in Ukraine and the 100th largest in Europe. So we know that Europe does not have many mega cities, barring the top 15 or 20, but this is still the 100th largest, 500,000 people. So it is not a small city by any stretch of imagination. It's also a city which is strategically and politically important. Politically, why? Because this is the biggest city in what is described as the Donetsk Republic or Donetsk region, which is an integral and important part, a most important part of the Donbas region, which the Russians say they have liberated, and where they say that we have now recognized Donetsk and Luhansk as two sovereign republics. Only Russians have done it. Now, if Donetsk is a republic for the Russian-speaking population there, then for them Mariupol is like the capital. In 2014, when the Russians came in to Crimea and they took Crimea, then forces supported by Russian army, that is Russian-speaking people of Donetsk, had also captured Mariupol. But the Ukrainian army, also helped along by many paramilitary units, and one of those I'll speak about in a minute, they got together and they drove the pro-Russian forces out and they recaptured or recovered Mariupol. So Donetsk has come into being in a way, so the Russian-speaking people there think, and Russians think Donetsk has come into being, but they think Donetsk is nothing without Mariupol. So Mariupol is the prize they need. That is political. Strategically, once they take Mariupol, that means one more important port city on the Ukrainian coast taken. Once they take Mariupol, then they can try to go west, because then Ukrainian forces will get really spread out, and if the Russians are able to get their will and either get the Ukrainian soldiers to disarm themselves and go away, although there is a little twist there which everybody will watch carefully, because once bitten twice shy. So if they go away, or if they don't go away, they keep on fighting and Russians lay a siege on Mariupol and ultimately create a kind of bag effect. So they have all these Ukrainian soldiers and armaments in the bag, and they capture all that. To that extent, they weakened Ukrainians' capacity to defend themselves, so they can move westwards and go towards the big port city of Odessa. If that happens, then Ukraine pretty much gets left without a coastline. Ukraine gets mostly landlocked, and that is a calamity for Ukraine. From there, then Russians can go towards the Moldavian border. Moldavia is very concerned about what's going on also. And then the larger encirclement of the Kyiv region can start. See all these positions in the map. The Russians can also then push towards Dnipro. Now, Dnipro is a city which is in many ways is like the fulcrum on which strategic power balance or strategic balance rests in Ukraine. If they take Dnipro, it's like getting the jugular of all of the Ukraine, or maybe not even the jugular, the heart of Ukraine, because then Kyiv just remains a city fortress for them to defend. Now, there's another way of understanding how important Mariupol is. Now, for the Russians in Crimea is controlled by the Russians. They also held some kind of a referendum there. In a kind of referendum, they got them some 90-something% of the vote, saying people want to be a part of Russia. After that, if they want to geographically connect with the Donetsk region or the Donbas region, which they claim now pretty much as their own, The only land contact, the only way to get to Donbass or Donetsk by land from Crimea is by taking Mariupol. So it's a very loose comparison, very, very loose comparison. Maybe it's not even so relevant anymore because the nature of warfare and has redefined geographies, and they have redefined geotactics, not geostrategy as much as geotactics. But imagine the small city of Pathankot that lies between mainland India and Jammu and Kashmir. Since 1947, India's only connection with Jammu and Kashmir has passed through this little narrow strip of territory around Pathankot. And that's why in every war, 65, 71, proactively Indian Army goes and opens out and moves in towards Pakistan to take that Shakargarh bulge, or as it's called, in Samba sector. That is to deny Pakistanis the space in case they come in a big assault. So in a big assault, the defender does fall back a little bit so that Kashmir is not cut off. Or see it also like the so-called Siliguri neck in our eastern sector. If that little neck of territory between, say, Nepal, Bhutan and China is not far away across Chumbi Valley, and that's the reason India got so worried about Doklam. If that goes in a big assault, a big power can cut through, can disconnect you at least for a day or two. If that happens, then the northeast is cut off. The Russians right now are cut off from Donbass, from Crimea. They would like Mariupol to establish a land bridge to Donetsk. And if that happens, then the tactical picture on the ground also changes. That's why Mariupol is so important. Now, for some wisdom on this, I read this article from Bobby Ghosh, my friend Bobby Ghosh, who is a former editor of Hindustan Times, on Bloomberg, which we have published on ThePrint today. Instead of just giving us his own gyan, he has the humility to talk to three other experts, three other fellow columnists on Bloomberg. There is Clara Ferreira Marquez, Andrea Scott, and Leonid Bershitsky. We read them often. We also quote from them often. And they explain the importance of this region and why this is such a life and death for all sides. Now, first of all, this is the Azov region. As I told you, this is the Azov Sea. So how did the Ukrainians manage to take Mariupol back from the pro-Russian or Russian-backed forces after 2014? They did that with the help of a lot of local paramilitary groups which are very highly motivated, very highly ideological. Those are people that Putin also describes as neo-Nazis, and in fact he uses them to then paint all of the Ukrainian government, Zelensky himself as neo-Nazis. So the key unit there is something that is called the Azov Battalion. It can be Azov Battalion, it can be Azov Regiment, you can call it what you wish. It was also called originally the Azov Special Operations Detachment. These are highly motivated ideological people who fight to the death. Now, why is it they are being called neo-Nazis? See this regiment's insignia. This regiment's insignia, if you see it carefully, this resembles quite closely the insignia of the 2nd Panzer Division, tank division. Now, it wasn't just any other tank division of German army. It wasn't just any other tank division of Wehrmacht. In the Second World War, this was a very elite and famous or infamous tank division of Waffen SS. It was involved in many key battles. It was also held responsible for many big massacres. So this insignia has a striking resemblance to that, and you will see both insignias. Of course, people of Azov Regiment now say that, oh, this has nothing to do with Nazis. This insignia is to do with the Ukrainian idea of unity, etc., etc., whatever that means. So जो जिसकी श्रद्धा है वो मानेगा. If you think these are neo-Nazis, you will think that they are copying the Nazis and they've styled themselves after 2nd Panzer Division of Waffen SS. Or if you are not, then you will think, oh, this is just this is just a coincidence. Because Ukrainians also know the value of this, because they know that if they lose this, then their south will become very vulnerable. In the east, they are under pressure. Closest to Kyiv, they're coming under pressure from Belarusian side, Belarus side. I'm sorry, I still sometimes lapse into using the old name of Belarusia. Russian forces are coming in from there also. There are rumors that Belarus might join in because that's very close to Kyiv. They think that pressure already in the east, pressure building from Belarus side, and that pressure, if it builds up, the effort then on the part of the Russians will be to move west and then choke off the routes of supplies coming in from Poland. These are supplies coming in from the US and other European countries. So they worry that if they lose this side also, then they will not have enough forces to defend themselves everywhere, and they will have to consolidate, bring back their troops, maybe into Kyiv, just to make the last stand there. And we know last stands don't always work in the history of great warfare. Or they think that too much will be lost, and tomorrow when there is a settlement, then Russia will consider Mariupol as its own. So Russia is responding to this by simply destroying Mariupol. And you can see the pictures. You can see the pictures before and after. And there is a pattern to this. Russians have done this before. Russian power has done this before after the Cold War. So 94, 95, and again in early 2000, they did precisely this with the city of Grozny. Grozny, which was called Groznyaya in Soviet times, is the capital city of Chechnya. That is where a war took place, first in mid-90s, pre-Putin, and second in early 90s, in early 2000, when Putin was not yet president, but he was prime minister. Yeltsin was still president. And that is when all of Grozny was reduced to rubble. In fact, at one point, Russia targeted 5 big SS-21 surface-to-surface missiles right into the main square of Grozny town when there was a big congregation there, and killed a lot of people. So when they walked in, there was nothing but rubble in Grozny. Now, I told you earlier that if they are telling Ukrainian soldiers to leave Mariupol without their weapons, they might have a doubt because there is a twist. That twist comes from Grozny, because at one point they told Grozny, the defenders, that look, you leave, you have amnesty, we'll do nothing, we give you safe conduct. And once the Russians realized, or Russians made a finding that all these soldiers were out, all these defenders were out, and they had no way to defend them, then the defenders discovered that Russians had already mined the route, and they were slaughtered while trying to walk away under the premise that they had been promised safe escape or safe conduct. That is the reason that even in Mariupol, Ukrainian soldiers are not going to trust, even if they lose their will to fight. But right now, it does not look like they will lose their will to fight. So if Russia goes on destroying this, see the other cities that have been destroyed, mostly under Russian bombing and Russian influence. Aleppo in Syria, where the Russian power has been fighting with the side of the ruler, that is the Bashar regime. Bashar, by the way, right now has been in UAE trying to negotiate some kind of a peace deal, because he also worries that if Russian power gets either diminished, or Russia suffers a big setback, or in any case, if this war goes on, Russia may not have the time or energy or the ammunition or the attention spans or the mind space to continue backing him the way they've been doing in the past. So he may want to sue for peace. But in his country, the ancient city of Aleppo was also similarly destroyed during many rounds of battles with the rebels there, and there also a lot of aerial bombing was carried out. Aerial and missile bombing was carried out by Russian forces. Once again, you want to see a city destroyed by war, although the Russians had almost nothing to do with it. See Mosul, see before and after. This is before ISIS moved in there, and then a big war was launched to evict the ISIS. In fact, the former Prime Minister of Iraq has now written a book on how Mosul was recovered or reconquered or recaptured. But see also, when war took place in that city, how badly was that city demolished. I bet you've seen films and documentaries on this. I keep seeing some of those on Netflix also. That city, in fact, also, let me also conclude on a pleasant note, that city has now been rebuilt, and see what it looks like now. So it's true that what is destroyed can also be built, but you also have to be a particularly bad guy, a particularly violent guy, or a violent set of guys or people. And I have no hesitation in using guys, because women almost never do it, right? To destroy ancient cities like that to rubble, as if you have enmity with every piece of brick and mortar or stone that stands there. That, unfortunately, right now is looking like the fate of Mariupol. So, go back to our own history. This is like the siege of Chittorgarh, which means you may fight to the last man and the last woman in your own way, but I will still come and I set your fortress to fire and I will destroy everything. That's the kind of thing that's happening right now to many Ukrainian cities, but most of all to this small place called Mariupol. Small, but not that small, the 100th largest city in Europe.